Good morning. It's New Year's Eve, the 31st of January, and it's in the morning. I'm up keeping an eye on a cow in calving mode. She's not calving yet, and I have to be in and out a lot. But it's a dirty, rotten, wet morning here in Ireland. I mean, there's nothing nice about it outside. But I think when we see videos and films of like westerns, and we ought to see it in good weather. I think that they don't show the bad weather. I certainly was in Pennsylvania and the rain was unbelievable, but it dries up pretty quick. But I'm only telling you, anyway, I don't dress up for these videos because I have to have roughish clothes. And when you're watching a cow to calve, you'll do something like cleaning up the shed and doing little bits of maintenance and things like that. So, yeah, I'm busy enough, but I get time to make an odd video. It's coldish. Now, I have heating here, but I have a fire on, but it's not just, it's underneath, and the heating system is noisy. It's a bit of a blower, and it heats up the central heating, and it's noisy, so I had to turn it off because you can hear it over the videos. This is old investigations. Now, the question frequently comes up, people wanting me to deal with very topical matters, traditional investigations, and that as a retired police officer. And I don't make any big deal about being a police officer. I served for 32 years. I grabbed me a bit of a pension and I got out, and that's all I ever looked forward to when I was in it, getting to where I am now. And the problem I have now is that I'm busy enough doing things like the farm and doing repair and maintenance, full-time job, that I don't really get enough time to do my hobbies in the workshop. That's my biggest regret. But I'm trying to get around to dealing with that anyway. So I have a blow heater, one of those space heaters in the workshop, and it's a great job. I don't care. There's no fumes or anything off it. It's a great job. Anyway, Mary Boyle comes up a lot. That little girl that went missing years ago. I think that was before I joined the job, but there was talk about her even when I was in the job, and I was stationed in Ballymote, and they used to say it was a Christian brother did it. Anyway, you can look it all up yourself. What I want to do is something else that will be useful, because I have always claimed on social media to be the second most intelligent person in Ireland. Now, some say I'm the second most intelligent man, but that would cut out all the women. And that means they could be smarter than me, and that's not on at all. And, my father used to tell me not to be telling people how to fix alternators and things, that you don't want them to be as smart as us, he'd say to you. Anyway, I love the crack with that. And when you tell Dubs, especially, they'd be left-wing Dublin fellas, and they see me fighting the windmills and all that, and they'll think this is all great. And they called me a curmudgeon, and then I say I'm the second most intelligent man in Ireland, and person in Ireland. They go bananas altogether, and then I come up with some real big, what do you call it? Formula for mathematics. Oh, it drives them mad. Great fun with it anyway. Anyway, I do want my viewers to be quite informed. I know too that you could have criminals watching me trying to become better criminals, and I don't want that. I want my viewers to be well informed, but I don't want my viewers ever to get near as smart as me. You can't have that. That's a hard. Anyway, I want to deal with here. I dug it up. The old Garda Guide. I bought this for £44, I think I had to pay for it. Way back years ago, I bought it. And I was doing duty out at Kevin Street over in Green Street Courthouse. The political trials was on at the time with IRA and all this. In Green Street Courthouse. It's closed now. And at each corner there was Halston Street. And then it met with North King Street, and there was another street going down the back there. And they were putting huts up. And I came on the scene one evening in winter, and they were putting a hut up on the corner we were on. And I looked up and I saw there was a light up there. You see the way the lamp here shines down. You see that? There's a lamp. And I got them to move it a bit. And they said, "What? This is where we were told. Oh, no, you wouldn't have time to get out and tackle a criminal. If it come along, you better leave it there." I did a course, told them all this baloney, all lies, and they moved it a bit, but it meant that the light could shine in the window. Do you see the way if I put my hand there over that, there's a bulb there above. See that? I had it that the light could come in and I could read the Garda Guide. And when everyone else was in looking out and doing nothing, I was studying on the QT. And when the inspector came around, I could just slip it in. I had a wee packing place for it, a wee shelf, slip it in there, and he never seen anything. What the inspectors used to be worried about was fellas with drinking porter. They'd get porter out of the pub. There was a pub across just beside it there. Oh, I'll think of it. I'll not think of it. It was a pub in the street, and they were worried about the publican sending up pints to the boys and them buying them. I wasn't into that, couldn't be bothered. But anyway, now what we're going to deal with here is the traditional powers of arrest. This is the Garda Guide, and unfortunately the index is gone of it. This was it nearly got burnt, but it's all quietly intact. So we'll see now what the law was at the time of Mary Boyle and what your powers was, so that you understand the historical situation. Powers of arrest. An arrest in a criminal sense is the apprehension or restraining of a person, of a man. You see, clearly at that stage, women didn't commit any crime, but I think it was a common law rule that men and women were, they didn't write down man or woman, just write down men, and that included men or women, of a man, in order that he may be forthcoming to answer an alleged or suspected crime. That's what an arrest is. Garda powers of arrest are derived from three sources: the common law, particular statutes, and warrant to arrest. See that? Common law, particular statutes, and warrant to arrest. Power of arrest at common law. The common law powers in this respect may be conveniently divided into classes. A, where a guard is under legal obligation to arrest. See that? Where a guard is under legal obligation to arrest. Where he has discretionary power. That's B, where he's discretionary power, which he may exercise or not according to the circumstances as judged by himself. You can replay that there if you want to. There's no point in me biting me cabbage twice. A Garda is bound to arrest any person whom he sees committing treason or felony or inflicting a dangerous wound. So felony would be stealing. Inflicting a dangerous wound is specifically mentioned. Treason is, that's a kind of obsolete now, but that's waging war against the state. So treason, felony, or inflicting a dangerous wound. Now, he is bound to arrest. He has no option. Sorry, I have a bit of a chill. Excuse me. It's the mist. It's the dust on the book out of an old loft. That's what's making me sneeze. So he's bound to arrest any person whom he sees committing treason or felony or inflicting a dangerous wound. Now, any person who is directly charged with felony. Now, felony is the serious type of crime. Nowadays, most things like fraud and that are felony. But anyway, felony was to steal something, or steal those several. Murder is another one, obviously, you know. Now, who is directly charged with felony by another, and reasonable grounds are adduced in support of the charge. That's where another person says that's what he's done. So Mary Jane says, that was after stealing my money, you can lift him. Once there's reasonable grounds, catch him, look him, that's it. You can take him in. Now, so he's bound to arrest in those cases. Any person who commits a breach of the peace within his view, if he cannot otherwise prevent it. So a fellow that's creating a breach of the peace, in his view, within his view. Now remark on these three bound powers of arrest, which you have to. He must see him in the first one. The person must be directly charged by another. Or who commits a breach of the peace within his view. Get that very clear into your heads, folks. Get that very clear. A Garda must be careful to distinguish between a charge by a third person and the giving of information as to an offence which the third person may know or to have been committed. So he might know, so a person telling you he done something, but there's a big difference now, just to read that again, between a charge by a third person and the giving of information as to an offence. There are two different things. One is giving you that fella's not button, that fella could have done that. That's different to him saying, I saw him doing it. In the case of a charge, the accuser desires the guard to take the party into custody and to keep him in custody, that he may be dealt with in accordance with law. You have that? While in the other case, the information given is only intended to help the Gardaí. Now, do you get that? So, leaving him to act upon it as he thinks fit. A formal and accurate charge is not required. It is sufficient if it substantially describes the offence. The Garda, before taking a person charged into custody, ought to consider the condition and repute of the person making the charge, and also of the person charged, as well as the seriousness of the offence and the grounds upon which the charge is founded. He should then regulate his conduct accordingly. Now, the next one is a Garda may arrest. M-A-Y. A bit of dust on the book, and that's what's making me sneeze. Excuse me. So now he may arrest any person whom he reasonably suspects of committing treason, felony, or inflicting a dangerous wound. Or, that's number one now. Number two, any person whom he sees threatening, Threatening, who he sees threatening to commit treason, felony, or a breach of the peace. So one is he reasonably suspects him of committing these felonies, these serious crimes, or whom he sees threatening to commit them. So you can lift him before he gets doing it. That makes sense. Now, three, any person who assaults him in the execution of his duty. So if somebody hits the guard, you can arrest. So now note the difference. One is bound to arrest and the other is may arrest. Now, a Garda should be careful to remember that, except in connection with a breach of the peace, there is no common law power of arrest without warrant for a misdemeanour. Now, nowadays they've made felonies into misdemeanour, and these powers are still in force, but they're a bit amended by legislation. That was the law at that time. Reasonable suspicion. Now, it goes on to deal with that. The question of reasonable suspicion is a matter of law, not of fact. If there is not reasonable grounds, the Garda will be liable for making an illegal arrest. So there was a threat in the Garda guide to you making an illegal arrest. Reasonable grounds. I'll read that to you again. The question of reasonable suspicion is a matter of law, not of fact. If there was not reasonable grounds, the Garda will be liable for making an illegal arrest. Factors to be considered in formulating reasonable suspicion would be the amount of information available, the source of such information, and whether such source was credible. A Garda may rely on hearsay and information if he takes reasonable steps to satisfy himself of probable truth. It is not necessary to take all steps open to him to verify the accuracy of such information, provided the facts brought to his notice furnish reasonable and probable cause for believing the arrestee to be guilty of the crime for which he is arrested. In other words, the guard has to be reasonably sure. Sorry. So now you see, if you think about this, you can arrest in these circumstances. I can't make it any clearer. Now I'm going to go on to the statutory power of arrest. Numerous statutes authorise arrest without warrant. The power of arrest may be conferred on any person, and there's a funny word, F-O-R-T-I-O-R-I. What does that mean? F-O-R-T-O-R-I. And a fortiori confined to members of the Gardaí. It might be a misprint. Right. For particulars as to the condition under which statutory powers of arrest may be exercised, the relevant statute must be consulted. So statutory powers, the most typical was the Offences Against the State Act 1939. You could arrest a person for committing the statutory offences: firearms, explosives, conspiracy and protection of property act, the Offence Against the State Act itself. So you could arrest and hold them for a day and hold them for another day on the authority of a superintendent. That was the Offences Against the State Act 1939. That was not available to you for most things. Indeed, a fella having an old shotgun shooting a duck with no licence probably didn't really come under it. You could use it, but you'd be stretching it a bit. But for ordinary stuff, like the cases of the missing people and all of that, they were mostly sexual related. And so they didn't come under the Offence Against the State Act. A power of arrest conditional on the offender being found committing means that the arrest must be contemporaneously with and immediately after the commission of the offence. So there you are. If some fella took of an unfortunate poor girl and murdered her up on the mountain, none of this applies. None of that law applies. Giboosh. N-O-N-E. I'll read that to you again. A power of arrest conditional on the offender being found committing means that the arrest must be contemporaneously. There was very little of that around where I was growing up. It means at the same time. Immediately after the commission of the offence. So the whole law was designed to catch them on the job. There was no law for investigating afterwards. If the arrest can only be effected by immediate pursuit, the arrest will be lawful, even though it occurs at some place other than where the offence was committed. So if he runs up the street from Lissaturden up to Lisnacracken, you can arrest him in Lisnacracken, provided you're running after him. But sure, it could be 3 days before you'd know the girl was gone missing. The observed commission of the offence, the pursuit and the arrest of the offender must be capable of being regarded as one continuous transaction. Now, warrant to arrest. This aspect is more fully dealt with under warrants. It may be here marked that a guard is bound to execute a warrant in the absence of a legal excuse. In arrest by warrant for offences less than felony, the guard must have the warrant in his possession. So if there's a warrant in the station and the guard's for a felony, for setting off, I can't use explosives because that's offence against the state, for knocking down a building with a bulldozer deliberately. Well, no, that's criminal damage. I can't use that either. That's one of the Offence Against the State Act. No, big robbing the money out, sneaking in the back window and taking 10,000. So if the warrant is up there in the station and the guard is away down the street, he can arrest him, provided it's a felony is on the warrant. Okay? Now, for offences less than felony, the guard must have the warrant in his possession. You had to have it in your grasp. You had to have it in your fingers. You couldn't use the fact that it's up there. Produce it and state the substance of the charge to the person arresting. In all cases not requiring immediate interference, it is much safer for the guard to obtain a warrant to arrest the offender. If he does, he will be entitled to the benefits of a number of cases stated here, both of which protect him absolutely when acting under a warrant. Okay, if you have a warrant, you're covered. Now, it says here about the use of force. The use of force will not be justified unless such force is absolutely necessary to effect the arrest. In most cases, there's no need to force, and you just catch him. So there's various cases. So the manner of arrest, the guard making the arrest should touch the offender's body or otherwise restrain his liberty, provided there is a touching. It is not necessary for the offender to be physically restrained. So you have to say, you're under arrest. Okay, that's it. No, that's it now, folks. 17 minutes. Not until 1984 did the Criminal Justice Act come into force to allow a person to be detained in a Garda station for questioning. Prior to 1984, you could not take a person to the Garda station for questioning. All of those powers of arrest. I love shouting at people like this. This is where I'm at my best. And I used to do this teaching people stuff long ago, and they all liked me. That's the funny thing. I thought it was great. I thought I was going to say out blackguard. Anyway, you could not legally go out and arrest a person whom you suspected of raping and murdering a child unless you had gone through that process. You had to be either bound to arrest him, treason, felony, or inflicting a dangerous wound, whom he sees. So felony would be murdering the girl. Whom he sees committing treason, felony, or inflicting a dangerous wound. All of those would apply. Well, not treason, of course. Any person who is directly charged with felony by another and reasonable grounds are reduced. So someone has to say, that fella did take the child. Who are you going to get to tell you that? Any person who commits a breach of the peace, that doesn't apply. It's not a breach of the peace. It's murder in this case. Now, you have a discretionary power of arrest. Any person whom he reasonably suspects of having committed treason, felony, or inflicting a dangerous wound. So now, pal, you reasonably suspect he murdered the woman. Felony. Murdered the girl. So, whom he reasonably suspects. Now, what are you going to base that on? Any person whom he sees threatening to commit doesn't apply. Or a person who assaults him in the course of duty doesn't apply. So the only power of arrest for anyone that takes a child away, he may arrest any person whom reasonably suspects of having committed treason, felony, or inflicting a dangerous wound. Right, so you'd want, now it goes on here, reasonable suspicion. The question of reasonable suspicion is a matter of law, not of fact. If there is not reasonable grounds, the Garda may be liable for making a legal arrest. So where do you get the legal grounds? You can go out and interview him and question him. There's no problem with that under the judge's rules. But at what point do you arrest him? You can question him all you like, and he can claim his right to silence and tell you nothing. Are you with me? Excuse me, there's dust on the book from an old loft. And it's caused me to do this. No, anyway. Who's that? The next question is, even you do push out the boat and lift him, what do you do with him? You must take him to the station. First of all, you must caution him that he's not obliged to say anything unless he wishes to do so, and anything he may say will be taken down in writing and may be given in evidence. You are not obliged to say anything unless in reply to the charge, and anything you may say will be taken down in writing and may be given in evidence. What do you do with him now? You can bring him in to the station. You can hold him while you're typing out the charge sheet. I hereby charge you that you did murder Lucy Jane Riley. I hate using names, but sorry for doing that. Lucy Jane Johnson or Lucy James Maguire, Martin, whatever. And you hand him the charge. What evidence have you? Comes up before the court. Where's your evidence? You have Sweet Fanny Adam. There was no procedure to hold a person for questioning except under Section 30 of the Offences Against the State Act, 929. Now, if I said Section 29, that's similar, but Section 30 is the actual arrestable offence. You could hold them in the station. That's for IRA, UVA, putting out bombs, guns, ammunition, all that sort of stuff. This is the killing of a child. God bless the mark. You have him into the station. What are you going to do with him? There was no power to hold him at all. He was entitled to get up and walk out any time he wanted. And the people of this country, including my people, and a lot of them, went in and voted Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. I'm a greyhound, Fianna Fáil, I'm going Fianna Fáil, 1, 2 and 3. Oh, Rory, what do you call you, man? Oh, Hanlon, oh, God, greyhound. Paddy Smith and all this. Oh, I voted Fine Gael, oh, John F. Conlon and Ballybane. Oh, greyhound, boy, oh, God, he got me a bit of a pension. That they didn't give two tuppenny damns whether there was law to enforce the abuse of children or the murdering of children. It didn't care. And in the election in 2024, they didn't give two tuppenny damns. They voted for the Hutch, a lad with a criminal record in Dublin. That's where the problem lay. It wasn't the Gardaí. It was the blackguards who voted in the polling stations. I keep coming back to that. And there is bigger blackguards today as there were back then. To think that we came from 1922 and that in 1939 the state was threatened by the Republican violence and all of them crowd and the UVF and all of them, and they'll be on to me now, oh, you can't just blame all Republicans. We were able to bring out the Offences Against the State Act to deal with it and hold them in custody and question them and extend it for another day and hold them in custody, do sampling and do everything. But when it wasn't that type of a crime, you couldn't do it for the murder of a girl. Why? Because the people who voted in the polling station, the blackguards, and some of them would be ancestors of mine, didn't give two damns about the life of anyone and still don't. In Dublin, they voted for Jerry Hutch himself, an admitted man with crime and reputation about drugs. And they wouldn't put in the poor old devil that was up Steenson. Malachy Steenson, is it? Put him out. And there was old biddies down in the chapel in that area. Oh, you know, he's not any worse a criminal than the government. I'm going to vote for him. And them above, Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, and taking Holy Communion. Don't come on to that with me, folks. Now, do you see the point? I remember in the Guards there was a robbery up in Balbriggan, and the lad that done it, he stole money and stuff, went down and he was doing bounce or somewhere down the country, and we went down and we had to invite him up. You had to say, would you please come back to the station? First of all, you had to arrest him. Next, you had to tell him he wasn't obliged to say anything. Then you had to ask him politely to go back to the station. When you had him at the station, you had to ask him to admit his crime. Every obstacle was put in the way of investigating crime. And then they have the neck to blame the guard. The cheek to blame the guard. When I joined the Guards, I was a good while in it, living under this. And there was the book. There was the book I bought. I gave £44 for it in cheap time. Look at the thickness of it. A quarter of it is the fishery laws. It doesn't apply at all. You'd never use them. But that's the law. There was no power of arrest to question anybody till 1984, when they brought out the Criminal Justice Act 1984, when you could bring him in and question him and put questions to him. You could then brought out laws about taking samples and DNA and all of that. And at the time I spoke about the rape case, I don't want to mention it anymore because I'm afraid of my life, I'll say something that would identify the people. That'd be totally wrong. This could be in a big area, from Balbriggan down as far as Athlone. I was in Ballymote and Sligo, across to there, right down across Leitrim and down across Cavan Monaghan, and I was in Dundalk for a while as well. And I lived in Drogheda for a while. So that's how big that area could be. So nobody's going to be able to identify those people. I don't want to say any more about that. At that time, there was a power to arrest Tommy. You could take him in, and I did. There was no power to force him to give a sample, but there was legal authority if he had signed a form. He signed a form. They had it bringing it in kind of that way. You could give it. And he signed it before his solicitor came, and I got the sample out of him with the doctor. I think there's compulsory now about that. We'll not go into there. But I could arrest him, bring him to the station orderly, bring him down to the room, talk to him. And the first thing he said to me, Sergeant, I didn't do it. I know you know the kind of a bio I am. I do mess about, but I didn't do it. And I had enough up here to know this could be very likely true. And the first thing I went for was the sample, because the law didn't prevent me taking the sample if he agreed to give it. And so he gave the sample, and the sample proved he didn't have sexual relations with the prosecutrix, which is the name given to a woman who alleges a man raped her or sexually raped her. Yeah. You see, so I could do that then. But if that were 1981, I couldn't. There was none of that DNA anyway. But you could do it illegally. And what the Guards was doing was they were taking fellas in, and sometimes for murders, battering them in the station. There was a murder squad, and there was a case of a Linsky girl, Una Linsky. And I think that was before that time. 1984 is the critical time. And so the murder squad would come down, go out to him, look him in totally illegally, bring him in, question him, often battle the ears off him, and try to get him to make a statement. And the courts kind of put up with it on the grounds that the Constitution allowed the Guards a certain discretion, but there was no law. You were on dicey water. You had a man in custody without any reason to hold him. And so, whereas maybe a murder where there was a body up the street, well, you had some wee thing. And but where a girl went missing, and over a period of a couple of weeks, it became aware that there was a lad hanging round, some bio hanging round, and the heat was gone off it, and there was no body. You go out and you take him in. He might admit it, but he was illegally in custody. And you'd nearly want to have a note of him to say, I agreed that I'm in custody and I want to help the guards. If his mind was such that he wanted to help you, you could say, come on over here now. We'll call him Aidan. Come on over here, Aidan. I want to talk to you about this. You could invite him down like that. And if he came in with the jaw hanging, tell us this. What did you do? Oh, I did. I took her away and I killed her. You then got a statement taken down and it got witnessed and you had him caught. That'd hold up. But you nearly had him prove that he was legally in custody. And there was a kind of a grey area in the course. The judges didn't want to let them off. Now, have you that understood? There was no power to arrest anyone prior to 1984 except for Offence Against the State Act, Criminal Justice Act, Protection of Property, Conspiracy Protection of Property, the Firearms Act, Explosive Substances Act 1875, and the Offence Against the State Act itself. There were 5 scheduled offences. I seen a detective sergeant one time in a court saying he arrested a fella for Section 30 on a non-scheduled offence. I think it was murder or something. Murder was not scheduled. It had to be done with a gun. And there was even cases where some fella killed somebody with a frying pan and split the frying pan. And he was arrested because he damaged the frying pan, not because he killed the person with it. Now, does that make that very clear? It's page 26 of the Garda Síochána Guide, and I'll just show you the bit of it, show it to you how it looks in the book here. And this is my property. I'm entitled to keep this. I own this. And there it's there. And I could read that backwards. I was used as a legal mine all over the force. When I went up for promotion, they'd look up at the ceiling and big old bellies on them like harvest frogs. And there'd be a lad there from the civil service, where's the Ural Mountains? Oh, they were the rascals. They were the rascals. I have no grievance over it. I'm happy enough. But it's still no harm to tell the rascality, which is as live today, if not worse, than it was back then. And still, I don't regret it. I had a greyhound time with the guards too. Sure, I'd have a good time anywhere. You only put me in a coal mine, I'd have a bit of crack. So that was the point. Have I explained that to you? In the Mary Boyle thing, there was allegations that there was this fella in, and that the superintendent wanted nothing done with him because he was connected with religion. And a lot of the superintendents were. They went straight to heaven. A sergeant didn't. I'll have to go through purgatory. They went straight up. Now, the question was asked there, were the Freemasons? I never come across any of them Freemasons, but they were all in the order of Columbanus, the Knights of Columbanus, the Lions Club. All things that give a little bit of status. Status was everything with them, you know. He gave a tuppeny damn about status. I have no time for it. So that's the thing. Now, I hope I've explained that reasonably good. And this is a good book. This contains the law. I often open that every day. People ring me up, well, I'm after arresting a fella here, what's the power? And he'd be looking for to know what the power was after he'd done it. And I'd point out it's there in the thing. But there was no power of arrest at common law or at any law, except for offences against the state, the 5 scheduled offences. And there was no way you could hold a person or hold him at all. You had to lie, you had to say that he'd come down voluntary to the station, and there was always a bit of hazy thing. Oh, you can go anytime you want, you know. Oh, well, I'll go, so, oh, well, hold on a minute now, hold on a minute. You see, there was this old stuff going on. And then there was the jackboot with some of the lads that come down from Dublin, and they'd get them to admit stuff that they'd never done. They'd be terrorised. Young country lads wouldn't have a clue. And the next thing they'd come under these fellas from the murder squad. And then these fellas would be often full of booze as well as everything else. And they'd used to take away their personal issue firearms so they couldn't be accused of shooting anyone. Now, it wasn't always the case. And a lot of cases were solved that would never be solved if you treated ordinary people like kid gloves. But now there's a camera. It's all on the camera. So they can't do a thing. I'm not convinced if abusing prisoners was the best way to go about it. I always like to gather up the evidence, footprints and stuff like that. And when you did that, it worked. But the authorities and the guards didn't like you being that, because if you spoke about that on an interview, they might promote you, and they didn't want to let me promoted ever. I was blacklisted the minute I got to be a sergeant. Blacklisted because I had an independent mind, and that's still the way. And that's what a young man joining the guards, or a young woman, has to understand. It's a good enough job, good enough pension. I'm over 20 years next March, and I'm not giving out about it at all. I just tell it as it is. Never let me into your circle. If you're at any crime or any mess, and if you let me in, I'll spot. I'll make a video. I don't care for nobody. Good luck. Comment underneath. I hope to get away from this. This is New Year's Eve. I wish I could have something jolly after this. This is the end of it. Good luck. Thank you.